Welcome to my channel. Hi everybody. Welcome back to my channel and to another episode of Endless Journeys. Still continuing with the second part of the story, discussing the tragic case of Victor and Pepita. And as you recall, Victor and Pepita were traveling the world for approximately 2 years on their honeymoon before they decided to head back home. And they did so by boarding the Titanic ship. And so one of the things that really complicated this case was the fact that it really did turn into something major because as for the survivor, Pepita, she, her life, she didn't have much of a life after Victor transpired, or so it apparently, it seems that he did transpire. And so the problem is, or the problem was rather, that they did not have, so what happened was when they married in December of that previous year, or the year before, I believe it was 1910. I'm not sure about the dates. I'm very sketchy. I know it was December, but Pepita had a dowry, and I believe that the terms of that dowry did not, I hope I'm saying that right, they did not allow for the circumstances of the return of her funds in the circumstance that Victor's remains would not ever appear. So I believe that the terms of that agreement with his family was that they would return the money to her, provided that Victor's death was very evident and apparent. So guys, because they could never actually find the remains, Victor's remains at sea, her life was in limbo. And it is because both families agreed to try to pass off somebody else's remains, probably somebody who was never claimed missing or whatever. I'm not sure. But somebody else eventually was identified as Victor in order for her funds to be returned to her, and so that she could get on with her life. And so that's why I had so many mixed feelings about what transpired after the Titanic disaster. And even though this is such a heartbreaking story, and I can really sense that Victor and Pepita were madly and passionately in love. There's something that just doesn't go sit well with me regarding what I just described. So now I'm going to take you to through that story, and let's remember that Victor and Pepita traveled the world, and so they made many stops along the way before finally and eventually getting onto the Titanic ship homeward. So I hope you enjoy this content. to my channel. Hi guys, I'm home now and I'm getting ready to make a little dinner, and then we'll sit down and talk again about this ongoing story regarding Victor and Pepita. And so I hope that you're enjoying it so far. I want you to keep in mind some questions that are going on in my mind, at least. Not when I first read the story, no. But going over it in my mind. And because of all the missing kids cases that I've been looking at, Victor could possibly be, you know, technically, he was a missing person. We know that he most likely perished, but what if he didn't? You know what I'm saying? We don't have that proof. Hold on, and I'm going to get back into the story and I tell you what Victor's family and Pepita actually did to have him declared dead. I hate saying that word. Transpired, gone from the planet. It doesn't seem right to me. It seems a little sketchy, and to me it could be that you know, had it not been for the jewels, I would not question the validity of anything that any of the persons related to Victor, including Pepita, you know, have been trying to tell us. But I have to take everything with a grain of salt because of the jewels. You know what I mean? Not despite, but because of the jewels and all of the precious value that was attached to them. We don't know exactly how they were acquired. I'm not saying that there was anything criminal going on, but maybe his disappearance also might have had something to do with something else. It's something that I just want you to keep your mind open to. And so anyway, I'm going to make my dinner. I'll let you see what I'm having, and then we'll get back to the story. Hi guys, so this is my dinner right here. I'm going to be making a couple of potatoes, some green vegetables, butternut squash, a plant-based burger, and a bun. And so that should be pretty much it. I'm preheating the oven now for my burger, and I may throw in a slice of plant-based cheese, I'm not sure. And that is my dinner in a nutshell. I'm going to be making the green vegetables with a little cube of oxo. And so there you have it. That's going to be my dinner. Hi guys, so if you remember, you know, Pepita was really resisting entering the lifeboat, and I'm not sure exactly why it was that Victor never made it to the lifeboat. It's not saying specifically in this article that only women and children were going in first. It has said that in other articles. However, I have been reading articles where men were rescued and put into lifeboats. So, I don't know what the criteria was. If it wasn't gender, what was it? What was the criteria that was required for getting saved on the Titanic? Was it social status? If it was, indeed, Victor had it. He would have had as much as he needed, but he never made it to the lifeboat. Don't you think that's a little strange? It's a little off, but we don't know exactly, at least I don't know how to read between the lines, because I don't know what's been left out, if anything has been left out. Don't forget these articles, this one in particular is being translated from another language, and so I don't know what's being left out. Certainly the story about Purificacion's objection to her children and daughter-in-law, her child and daughter-in-law traveling by ocean, okay, that sounds like it could be valid. But somehow, to me, the story about the postcards, okay, I'm sure it happened, but it doesn't convince me that something that shouldn't have been going on was going on. It was going on, I think. I have a very roundabout way of explaining things, but I think that there's something off about the postcard story, that maybe it was just used as a front, or maybe Victor was trying to hide something about his whereabouts, and so that is why he had all those postcards. I don't know. Was it very essential for him to mail postcards from all those cities? I don't know. I don't know if he had an ulterior motive, and I don't know precisely what he was going to do with all those jewels. And so that's why I take everything about this story from here on with a bit of a grain of salt, and if you can see my point. And so obviously Pepita put on a big scene, and I'm sure that she did not want to be torn away from her husband. She didn't want to get into the lifeboat, and it was Countess Rothus who convinced her that it was the only way, it would be all right in the end, and life was going to get okay if we just get into lifeboat 8. Well, somehow, I don't think that the entire side of the story, the entire part of the story from here on has been completely told. It does seem like there are major chunks of important details being left out, maybe because they were forgotten or not known, or maybe just because it was an attempt to conceal something. I say that about all cases, but it's kind of obvious when you can see that something doesn't sound right. And so, if you know where I'm going with this, I really question, I don't doubt, but I question the authenticity of the story that they went shopping for jewels and they had all these receipts for them. What they may indeed have, but maybe what if those jewels were hot? What if they were stolen? I don't know if this story gets any clearer, but it doesn't get much better from here on. So brace yourself. So guys, later accounts of this couple include that Victor was very proficient in the English language. He was gentlemanly, classy, charming, generous. However, it was not the same case, language-wise, I mean, for Pepita, because she, even though she was of a very good disposition and a warm and loving nature, she was not proficient in the English language. And therefore the exchange, you see what I'm saying, guys? They might have been saying other things too. Now, I'm sure if I were there, I probably would have caught most of it. Since I lived in a Spanish-speaking country for 25 years, it's not clear if they were saying other things as well. So what my implication is this: it was a very tear-jerking and very emotional, and yes, it was a very tragic scene, a scene that never should have taken place in any part of the Titanic, not just on the deck or not just with this couple, with anyone. And so Gladys Cherry, Countess Rotha's cousin, remembers that Victor parted from his beloved Pepita as a terrible and tragic gesture. It was a horrific scene to take in, and so no, they weren't acting. No, that's not my meaning at all. But what I'm saying is, if there were any other words uttered by them with the significance of the jewels, or where they had been going, where they had been before that, what they had been doing prior to embarking on the Titanic, that's what I'm referring to. I'm not referring to the authenticity of their grief. I'm referring to their authenticity as decent human people, humane people, I should say. That's what I'm questioning. We don't know anything other than what the articles are telling us. And indeed, if there was something to cover up about this family, the Peñasco family, they would have had the power to do so. And I'm going to explain that in just a few seconds. And so as they waited for the lifeboat, patience wore thin because she wasn't getting in, and people had to go. People had to be rescued. And so the Countess gently interceded the conversation between the lovebirds in French. And she talks about this and writes about this later on in her life too. That was a very pivotal scene, guys. And I probably am sure that if I saw the Titanic again, I might just miss it, because it's very hard to figure out who's who in the movie, who's fictional, or what. You know, that's why I'm not crazy about remakes of real life tragedies. I don't think it ever can do it much justice, but just the same, I know that the Titanic story was a beautiful movie, and yes, it imparted a lot of very valuable messages, and not saying anything bad about the movie. Gladys Cherry recalled that the Peñasco scene was quite tragic and very, very tear-jerking. And so Pepita was she was not put off by the Countess's intervening, but she was all the more grief-stricken. It didn't make much of a difference on her at all. She was inconsolable. And finally, according to Gladys, Victor threw Pepita in their arms and begged them, take care of her. So, guys, what a tragic scene. And I'm wondering even now if they had a secret like the orphan's dad did. And, you know, I'm just doing that because there were a lot of people on this boat who were either running for the law or hiding bad experiences, bad relationships. Eva Hart's mom, it was all so mysterious and dark at times. We don't know what to believe, because most of these victims are either passed away or never made it to safety at all. So we have nothing but articles and bits and pieces from survivors to go on, right? So there are some accounts of Victor, who was last seen on the boat deck, on the deck of the Titanic ship, on his knees in prayer. And indeed, he must have been quite desperate. He must have been grief-stricken. He must have known what tragedy would befall him and the rest of the passengers. He was never seen again, guys. He was never seen alive. His remains have never been found. And even though Pepita wailed and wailed as the boat descended and pushed away from the Titanic, Victor never reappeared. Countess of Roths described Pepita in really heartbreaking detail in an April the 21st, 1912 issue of the New York Herald. And so really, because of cultural barriers, even here in this country, USA, of 1912, Noelle she had to be the one to break the cultural barriers and give Pepita a voice that she otherwise would not have had in North America. And so I find that also extremely sad. You know what I'm saying? Why people of different cultures and nationalities need to have others to speak up for them. It's not exactly entirely clear to me, and it still goes on, guys. You go to a different country and something happens to you, you don't get a voice. Somebody else tells the story for you, but you don't get your own voice. So now let's talk about the legacy of Pepita and the Penasco family, the survivors of Victor's tragedy. And so this is probably by far the ugliest part of the story. And although it doesn't have anything graphic or horrific about it, it is indeed, to me, in my opinion, quite criminal. And I'm going to explain to you right now. So, when the Carpathia rescue ship deposited all of its survivors in New York City, Victor's mother, Purificación, had no idea that Victor and Pepita were even ever on the Titanic, had ever even sailed, let alone that Victor transpired, allegedly. And so Victor's mother found out about the tragedy of the Penasco couple from a Madrid newspaper, of all places. And guess what, guys? Guess what made her grief even more horrific? She was still getting postcards from her very much not alive son, Victor, right? I wonder how long they continue to come. It makes me shudder to think about it. What an ironic and eerie, pranky, ghoulish. Oh, guys, don't ever do anything like that. So, anyway, how could Victor's death be a true event when Purificación had been receiving all of his postcards from Paris all along? So, not a good story. To compound the tragic implications of the Penasco situation, soon the grieving widow and the Penasco family came together because they were faced with a financial dilemma, a real crisis, in addition to the death of Victor. And so it was this, guys. It was Spanish law. It simply was the fact that in Spanish law, under Spanish rule, and I still think so, it's still today. I'm not sure if anything has changed or any conditions have been made to this law, but it is this, that if somebody has been transpired for a period of time, no money can be collected, say in a will, until 2 decades, 20 years have passed by. Because if there were no remains, that means there was no proof of a death, right? We had something of a similar situation going on in the Amelia Earhart case, where her trust funds that would pay for the search couldn't be kept up much longer because they didn't know if she was dead or alive for sure. Something similar to that. I remember trying to explain it, but it was a very complicated matter. And so the real tragedy, guys, is how the Penascos dealt with this dilemma. So the dilemma was this: Pepita, contemporary Spanish law did recognize Pepita as legally widowed. However, she could not inherit Victor's fortune for decades. And guys, I want to call your attention to the fact that, even though it is about money, I don't think it was necessarily about money in this particular case. I don't think that Pepita was at all concerned about getting money from Victor. She was an heiress. She was already very wealthy. However, they had a dowry tied up. That was combined finances, bundled together in this fund that they couldn't reach. And so all of her money was gone. It was a dowry. And so apart from the fact that without his body as proof of death, Victor could not be declared dead, the thing is that she couldn't move on emotionally. She couldn't put closure to this. Always in the back of her mind, she probably would have thought, well, is he dead or is he alive? You know what I'm saying? Where are his remains? But people tend to think like that even if they have to face the logical conclusion that this person is no longer alive, like we have with the imploded submarine passengers, can you imagine if they were all citizens under Spanish rule? It would be horrific. But in any case, I know that it's very technical and it's very efficient. I think it really does take care of a lot of other sorts of legal indiscrepancies. And so I think in a way the Spanish law in that case is very good. It was very good. But Pepita could not remarry. She could not get her funds. She could not move on. She couldn't let go. And knowing the mental anguish that she was faced with just before she parted from Victor, it would have been horrific. I'm sure she was very, very traumatized and could not get over it. However, the reality of everything was that all of her life was tied up in that trust fund that she couldn't get. And so it was very, very hard for her to move on, to find closure, to face a future. She had no future. It was tied up in funds. You know what I'm saying, guys? And so, figuratively, everybody in the situation, the Penascos, Pepita, they were all cornered and trapped by this law, by this very, I think in a way it's very smart. And it prohibits a lot of people from committing crimes, right? Maybe we should all have some sort of law like that. But, if there's no body, you can't get that insurance money. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, bear with me. Here's what the Penasco family did. And they made a very, very unusual gesture towards to me, it's like it favored Pepita in their eyes. I don't mean that they favored Pepita over Victor. I think it means that they really highly admired and respected her and wanted her to move on. And so what they did, guys, they bribed somebody to produce a Titanic corpse. And Victor's family bought an unnamed victim's corpse. And so this is what is being told by descendants of Pepita and Victor on both sides. Fermina, the maid, then identified it as Victor. Now, would this be why she was I don't want to even go there. It could not have been staged. So Fermina identified that corpse as Victor, which was evidence enough to issue a death certificate. Even though I empathize totally with Pepita, it just goes to show you guys what power can do, what status and importance can help one get away with. And why I'm so down on this particular deed is not that it helped Pepita, but that it prevented somebody else's loved one from the Titanic from going home. That's what I'm saying, guys. It was a very inhumane thing to do, in my opinion. Regardless of Pepita and her feelings, it prevented somebody else from claiming their own loved one as passed away. That loved one whose corpse was mistakenly and deliberately misidentified by Fermina, it caused them to have a lifelong loss without ever having closure. So, you know what I'm saying, guys. You know what I'm saying. It was not a right thing to do. And so, that also, the death certificate described the age of this male, and that is why some accounts name Victor as an 18-year-old and others as a 22-year-old, others as a 24-year-old. There's conflicting accounts because one of those bodies was not Victor's. Surprise! So, not a good scenario at all. And so, with that travesty, with that transgression of justice, the Peñascos and Pepita were able to transfer the money, and she was able to move forward with her life legally, emotionally, and very financially well endowed. So, there you have it. And so actually Pepita did remarry 6 years later and had 3 children. And Fermina, the maid, continued to work for her through her own retirement as Pepita had these children and married someone else. And so eventually she did pass away at 83 years old in the 70s. And that's all I have for you tonight, guys. That's all I have. This was a very heart-wrenching story. But to me, it sounds almost as though there's a lot more to it than actually meets the eye. But we're not at liberty to research it or scout out the details, if there indeed were any. It sounds like it could be the perfect cover-up for a very sinister and criminal story, but I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that the way it's told, the details about the postcards, it's too involved, it's too intricate, it's too, I don't know, I can't find the proper word for it, but it's too contorted and confused for me. It could be that they were simply just trying to protect Victor's mother, but I think it was a little too contrived. And of course, nobody's asking me, but I'm going to tell you just the same. However, it is a very heart-wrenching story. It's a tragedy to me. And it really does deserve to be told in a movie all of its own. And that is why I'm so interested in finding out if there are any more details. I haven't so far come up with anything more. And so I hope that you have enjoyed listening and watching. And as for the lights, I may go for a light fixture up here. And it's no point in showing you, it's dusty and old, but it's burnt out and I need to have it replaced at some point. So I'm looking for light bulbs and I'm looking for other light bulbs, if you get my drift. I'm going to continue shopping for light fixtures and light bulbs, and we'll have to see what I can come up with. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening and watching. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye for now.